Before we start, I just want to share with you my practice in yoga so you are in a position to judge for yourselves whether or not I know what I'm talking about. I've practiced yoga all my adult life. I'm now 67 and I began when I was 25. When I started, I was going to formal lessons, and when I was sitting cross-legged, I noticed that I started to rock backwards and forwards, very gently at first, but as time went by, the rocking got stronger and stronger. I told my teacher about this and he said it was the Kundalini. He gave me some books to read. The Kundalini is a sexual energy that seems to arise in the pelvic area, although the books formally say the base of the spine. Anyway, I got more and more involved with this tantric yoga. I was sharing a house at the time with a woman. The house was an old wooden house on stumps, and I would go off into my bedroom and bring on the Kundalini, and my practice was becoming so strong that the whole house would rock. This poor woman must have wondered what the hell was going on in my bedroom. The Kundalini started to take over my life, and I would start to rock when I was sitting on a chair at the kitchen table. I told a friend about this, and he helped me to get the whole thing into perspective when he called it mental masturbation. That was the day I decided I had to stop it, and I have only ever done Hatha Yoga since, for the past 42 years. I've gone to formal lessons from time to time, but I've always found the formal lessons a little bit boring. I would often ask myself, when is it going to end? So for the most part, I would just do my own postures at home when I woke up in the mornings. I've got high blood pressure and I don't take drugs for it. I thought I would start doing saunas and sweat the soul out of me. I told my niece about this and she suggested hot yoga. I tried so-called heated yoga for a month. There was plenty of sweating, but still I had this feeling, asking this question, when is it going to end? Then I tried hot yoga, Bikram Yoga, and from the very first session I knew that this is what I was looking for. Not only was I not asking, when is it going to end? I was asking, oh my God, is it over already? And the Bikram Yoga session is 90 minutes, which is actually longer than most yoga sessions. After a session of Bikram Yoga, I have this feeling that I'm slightly stoned. So the whole experience, from the first posture through to several hours after the session has ended, is actually quite blissful for me. Then I came across a research article about sauna bathing, that it increases the heart rate like mild exercise and it reduces blood pressure. It was at this point I decided that I wanted to write an article about the sweat factor in Bikram Yoga. I was at a dinner party and I told the others about it, and one of the guys there said that he had tried Bikram Yoga and didn't like it, but that he went to a sweat lodge ceremony in Belgium. At this point then I decided, well, I'll have to look into this as well. Then I came across a book called Sweat, the illustrated history and description of the Finnish sauna, Russian bania, Turkish Hamman or Islamic Hamman, Japanese mushi-buro, Mexican Temescal, and the American Indian and Eskimo Sweat Lodge by Michael Alland. 42 years ago, when I was making that old wooden house rock with my tantric yoga, this man spent 3 years of his life going around the world trying every conceivable sweaty ritual he could find. And then he wrote a book about it, which was published in 1978. My own article would not be anywhere near as good if I didn't have his book to refer to. Coincidentally, Bikram Chowdhury's first book, Bikram's Beginning Yoga Class, was also published in that year. So my current state of enlightenment is that I do 7 sessions of Bikram Yoga a week, and indeed I schedule my week around those sessions, and I acknowledge the spiritual aspect of those sessions. I am the Buddha. There's now a considerable body of literature about the health benefits of Hatha Yoga. For example, it's well settled that yoga will reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease, improve the lifestyle of people suffering from diabetes and certain forms of cancer, and that yoga, as well as other mind-body therapies, can reduce the levels of anxiety and improve the state of mind of people suffering from depression, stress, and eating disorders. In general, Bikram Yoga as a form of Hatha Yoga would also deliver those sorts of benefits to practitioners. In recent times, most of the studies concentrate on Bikram Yoga because of its popularity. And we find that the studies tend to be negative about the specific benefits of this form of practice as a viable form of exercise. For example, it's said of Bikram Yoga that although regular sessions will improve muscular strength, there is no effect on aerobic fitness. A very recent study has found that the high ambient temperatures in a Bikram Yoga session will deliver no added benefits over and above other forms of yoga. All the studies relating to resting heart rate and systolic and diastolic blood pressure have found that Bikram Yoga will produce no significant changes over time. All these studies were done on normotensive subjects, that's to say, their blood pressure is normal. Yet Bikram Yoga practitioners have lower mean resting heart rate and blood pressure than US national averages, and there are several studies that suggest that frequent and sustained Bikram Yoga would reduce blood pressure. In this talk, it will be argued that profuse sweating on its own, regardless of what activity or exercise has caused it, will deliver very significant benefits physically, psychologically, and even spiritually. The profuse sweating in a Bikram Yoga session takes Bikram Yoga to an even higher level, where it can be compared with the sweaty rituals that have evolved in various diverse races and cultures throughout human history. The sweat factor in Bikram Yoga resonates with a primary and primeval human need. It's impossible to overestimate the role of ritual in human society. In the last resort, our whole life is just one long ritual. As a general rule, we get up about the same time, we take our meals around the same time, we do pretty much the same things every day. We are creatures of habit, and repetition and order and predictability are essential for our mental welfare. Our comfort zone consists of our familiar environment and our familiar occupations and pastimes. Once you take us out of our comfort zone, neurosis will quickly set in. Not only is our whole life one long ritual, but every day is taken up with rituals. Work is a ritual. Picking the kids up from school is a ritual. A game of golf is a ritual. Shopping is a ritual. Intercourse, both social and sexual, is a ritual. Sleep is a ritual. Our life is nothing but rituals within rituals within rituals. There are psychological rituals designed to relieve levels of stress and to give us psychological insights into our emotional problems, such as hypnosis and psychoanalysis. In every culture, there are rituals surrounding death, facilitating the grieving process and the loss of a loved one. The rites of passage is a ritual to change the status or identity within a group, such as confirmation of adulthood. The 21st birthday party, for example, is a rite of passage ritual universally observed in Western culture. As we will be dealing with the Native American sweat lodge in this section, I should mention that for some Native American tribes, war is regarded as an abnormal condition, an aberration of the harmonious order of the universe. Elaborate rituals are in place whereby the culture can honor the acts of bravery of the warrior and provide rituals to purge, cleanse, and heal the physical and psychological wounds of war, thus transforming the warrior identity back to peace and harmony. Warriors who cannot adjust to peacetime and again find a strong bonding with their social milieu will likely suffer feelings of alienation and the assumption of a victimized state with debilitating psychological consequences such as alcoholism, depression, self-despair, and suicide. In many tribal groups, the shaman of the culture adopts the role of healer or medicine person and performs rituals of various types to relieve pain and suffering and restore good health and spirituality to the victim. Anthony F.C. Wallace, the distinguished anthropologist, has written, "Induced ecstatic states caused by crudely and directly manipulating physiological processes can be found in every religious system. Such manipulations come under four major headings: drugs, sensory deprivation, mortification of the flesh by pain, sleeplessness and fatigue, and deprivation of food, water and air." The last three dimensions are commonly used by many Native American tribes in their healing and purification rituals, especially in their sweat lodge ceremony. The sweat lodge ceremony is used by many tribal groups, and it has physical, psychological, group-oriented and spiritual dimensions that can potentially alleviate physical pain and emotional distress. It's not necessary here to go into the precise structure and conditions of the sweat lodge. It's obviously a ceremony that is much more discomforting and arduous than Bikram Yoga. The interior of the lodge creates an encapsulated space that causes feelings of claustrophobia and an urge to escape. The lodge is crowded since the members sit side by side, knee to knee, in cross-legged fashion. There is no room to stretch out or to alter one's posture of facing the pit. The interior of the lodge is configured in a circle which links the members of the group together. There is both physical and symbolic unity. The members are bonded together in a common environment that is simultaneously a dark space void of light and full of stress and pressure generated by the heat, steam, and smoke. In the early stages of the ceremony, particularly prior to the first door, are painful, distressing, and trying. The urge to escape, to seek relief, is strong, but there is no room to move, and there is only one door to exit at, which is stationed adjacent to the medicine person. In response to this, the individual's attention becomes acutely focused on his or her physical and psychological state. Physically, the body is attempting to adjust to the change in temperature and humidity. There is an inner struggle to overcome the pain caused by the heat and cramped conditions. The heart beats rapidly, breathing is shallow and quick, and there is profuse sweating. Each member must find a way to overcome the pain, distress, and suffering while simultaneously listening to the prayers and words of the leader and other members. It's suggested that the instructor in a Bikram Yoga session performs a role similar to the shaman in the sweat lodge ceremony. The monologue of the instructor in Bikram Yoga is essentially inspirational and motivational in nature. The instructor is constantly exhorting the members to adopt the perfect posture and to stretch their bodies to the absolute limit. It's arguable that the role of the shaman is not dissimilar to the role of a psychiatrist, psychologist, or other healthcare providers who seek to help people suffering from physical pain or emotional distress. What does differ, of course, is the cultural system, or the cultural context, language system, and symbolic aspects in which the ritualized practice of healing takes place. But can it be possible that the sweat lodge ceremony contains an archetype form of human experience which in some way transcends cultural diversity and produces a psychobiological state that can potentially alleviate pain and suffering and bring about a change in the modalities of perceiving, thinking, and understanding oneself in relation to others and the world? The sweat lodge ceremony is also said to induce altered states of consciousness, but there can't be any doubt that the Bikram Yoga session is also designed to bring about a change of consciousness in the participants. While performing the asanas, emphasis is on total focus on the body and on the breath in particular, to the exclusion of all other considerations. While during the periods of savasana, emphasis is on absolute stillness and total and complete concentration on the breath. During the 90-minute session of Bikram Yoga, the instructor is continually trying to get the participants into a state of mind where they do not have one single extraneous thought. This is surely an altered state of consciousness. An altered state of consciousness for a given individual is when she clearly feels a qualitative shift in her pattern of mental functioning. Not that she feels a quantitative shift. The quality or qualities of her mental processes are different. The conditions in the sweat lodge ceremony are obviously much more extreme than in Bikram Yoga. The combination of heat, steam, and lack of ventilation has a suffocating effect where it is difficult to breathe in comfort. As a result, attention becomes acutely focused on one's inner state while listening to the words of others. There is an inner struggle to overcome the powerful urge to escape. There is often reported a loss of time, near or actual dehydration, and many members described an altered state of consciousness. The conditions in the sweat lodge ceremony would be such as to affect the production of neuropeptides, endogenous opioids, that are commonly associated with altered states of consciousness and with psychological reports of calmness, euphoria, energy, and well-being. It's suggested that the performance of hatha yoga postures in heated conditions where there is extreme sweating and an altered state of consciousness, with emphasis being placed always on stretching, twisting, and contorting various parts of the body to the absolute limit, occasioning pain, would most certainly occasion the release of endorphins, although to a lesser extent than the sweat lodge ceremony and extreme exercise in the heat in general. The Bikram Yoga ritual is performed in a ambient environment heated to 40.6 degrees Celsius with humidity at 40%. As the average body temperature is 37.5 to 38.3 degrees Celsius, the Bikram Yoga ritual would induce mild hypothermia in the participants. Sweating is the principal heat loss mechanism for humans, which dissipates heat by evaporation, assuming sufficiently low humidity. The conditions in the Bikram Yoga ritual would be conducive to minimal evaporation of sweat. In addition, it's well settled that endorphin production and hypothermia are correlated. Also, mild hypothermia has many health benefits and is widely used in the practice of thermal medicine in general. The sauna, as it's known in the Western world today, originated in Finland. And although modern sauna bathing has no spiritual or religious significance, the sauna steam was regarded as synonymous with soul, life, or spirit in the original Finnish tradition and in countries with languages related to the Finnish, such as Latvia, Estonia, Russia, and Hungary. Indeed, there's an old Finnish saying, one should behave in the sauna as in church. The Finns believed that a sauna elf resided in the sauna that had to be placated and respected. In other words, the sauna definitely had a religious significance at the start. The Russian bania is very similar to the Finnish sauna, and the original religious significance is even better documented. To quote a Russian sorcerer, it's well known how man came into being. Man was created when God took a bania and sweated profusely. He dried himself off with straw and dropped the straw to earth, where the devil used the straw to create the body. Then later, God gave man his soul. Just as the Finnish sauna is the haunt of the sauna elf, the Russian bania is the haunt of the bunnik, that likewise had to be placated and respected. To protect yourself from the bunnik, etiquette required making the sign of the cross before entering the bania, wishing your comrades a good bath, and before leaving, wishing the bunnik a hearty goodbye. As the bunnik liked a clean room, cleaning and heating the bania were duties that could not be neglected. The bunnik controlled the quality of steam and could turn harmless steam into deadly coal gas if he was not satisfied. The third or fourth session of bathing was always reserved for the bunnik who liked to take his bath in the dark. Soap, lye and birch twigs were left out for him, and a little extra because sometimes the bunnik would like to invite his forest friends to join him. Sometimes the devil himself. The magical properties of sauna bathing are the reason that the significant stages in a Finn's and Russian's life, birth, adulthood, marriage and death, were all conducted in the sauna or bania. The sauna and bania is an extreme sensory experience. During the ritual, they would beat themselves in a very lively manner on the back and legs with switches made of slender twigs, usually of young birch trees. The Apostle Andreas, who visited Russia during missionary work in the 12th century, reports, "Wondrous to relate," he says, "I saw the land of the Slavs. And while I was among them, I noticed their wooden bathhouses. They warm them to extreme heat, then undress, and after anointing their bodies with tallow, take young reeds and lash their bodies. They lash themselves so violently that they barely escape alive. Then they drench themselves with cold water, and thus they are revived. They think nothing about doing this every day, and thus inflict such voluntary torment upon themselves. They make of the act more than a mere washing, but a veritable torment. The lashing with the birch tree switches causes the blood to rise to the surface of the skin so that the heat could escape from their bodies quicker. They emerge from the bania with their skin gleaming a pinkish hue. The report above describes drenching themselves with cold water after sauna bathing. In fact, the water is likely to be near freezing, and it was common for them to roll naked in the snow. Such an extreme sensory experience would surely cause such a rush of endorphins as to put them into a state of euphoria, comparable even to religious ecstasy. The Greco-Roman baths of the ancient Greeks and Romans also involved sauna bathing. The expression cleanliness is next to godliness seems to have first appeared in Babylonian and Hebrew texts. But that is certainly the spirit of the sweaty rituals in Greece, ancient Greece and Rome as well. There was certainly an element of purification about it, the desire to become pure inside and out. Originally, the hot air baths of the Greeks were called laconica, and they had significant social aspects, rites of birth, rites of marriage, rites of death, as well as being adjunct to a gymnasium where physical games and exercises took place. One of the original names for the Roman baths was thermae, which clearly conveys the sweaty aspect. The Romans also had smaller baths called balneum, which were on the same scale as the Greek laconica. And the thermae were on a much grander scale. Successive Roman emperors tried to outdo each other with the grandeur of the thermae they had constructed. The Diocletian baths had a capacity for 6,000 bathers. The walls of the thermae enclosed a sports clinic, swimming pool, parks, libraries, a small theatre for poetry readings and music, and a great hall for parties. It was a city within a city. Generally, the ritual involved physical games and exercises beforehand. The bathers then trekked through 3 rooms, progressing from tepid to hot, called tepidarium, caldarium, and laconicum, respectively. The body was then primed for a vigorous massage, followed by a scraping off of dead skin with the striggle. A thorough scrubbing and a cool dip in the pool of the frigidarium was next. Generally, the health benefits of the Roman baths was considered to be the work of the gods. Often, the baths were constructed adjacent to a temple, and sometimes, indeed, the temple was part of the bath complex, as, for example, the Roman baths in Bath in England. Although the primary purpose of the Roman baths was the pursuit of well-being and entertainment, the Christians denounced these cathedrals of flesh as part of their opposition to pagan rituals in general. Physical purification was also a very significant part of the Muslim faith, and the Turkish Hamman was constructed in the form of a temple. The Arabs first encountered the Greco-Roman baths in Syria, but it was not until Muhammad himself enthusiastically recommended the sweat bath around 600 Christian era that the Islamic Hamman began to proliferate. Muhammad believed that the warmth of the Hamman, which in Arabic means spreader of warmth, enhanced fertility, and the followers of the faith should multiply. The Islamic Hamman took on a religious significance and was an annex to the mosque, and it was used to comply with the Islamic laws of hygiene and purification. Interestingly, the Turkish version of the Hamman, the so-called Turkish bath, also included a vigorous massage as part of the ritual. These massages were administered by teleks, who were very muscular, powerful men. The massage was very forceful, according to one participant describing the teleks working on a group of Swedish visitors. They stretched, twisted, kneaded and pummeled them like lumps of dough. One telek seemed to be determined to see how many different pretzel shapes he could make out of a skinny Swede. When it became this participant's time for the massage, he says the style and control of the teleks is remarkable. Powerful, unrelenting, yet agreeable. With joints cracking and muscles stretching, they pushed and urged the tips of my toes to touch the back of my neck, even to the point of extreme pain. Then a quick release triggered a flood of electric tingles down my spine, cancelling the need to cry out in pain. A surging pleasure rushed in where the pain had been. The similarities between these massages and Bikram Yoga postures are obvious, and Bikram Yoga is evidently just a less strenuous variation on a theme of the Turkish Hamman, which has itself been compared to the games and exercises of the Roman baths. Communal sweat lodges were communal sweat lodges similar to the Native-American sweat lodge were common in Ireland till the 19th century. It's not known how the custom of hot air bathing originated in Ireland. It was probably introduced to them by the invading Vikings in the 8th century. It was considered to have therapeutic benefits and to give the bather a sense of well-being and cleanliness. The Reverend D.B. Mulcahy, writing about the ancient Irish hot air baths, says, young women who wish to improve their complexion after making peat and pulling flax would use the sweat bath, as it removed the kells or stains and made them look nice and white. Just as rustic as the sod mounds in Ireland were the thatched sweat huts in Africa. Heat and sweating were basic remedies for all kinds of ailments in tribal groups south of the Sahara. In the late 18th century, Mungo Park writes, African diseases are but few in number. At the first attack of a fever, when the patient complains of a cold, they frequently place him on a sort of vapor bath, which is done by spreading the branches of the Nuclear orientalis on hot wood embers, and then placing the patient upon them, wrapped in a large cotton cloth. Water is then sprinkled on the branches, which, descending down onto the embers, soon covers the patient in a cloud of vapor in which he is allowed to remain until the embers are almost extinguished. This procedure commonly induced profuse perspiration and wonderfully relieves the sufferer. Writing about the Tanzanian Bantu in 1927, Henri Junot says, there is a sort of Turkish vapor bath that is administered for certain complaints and after funeral rites to remove the contamination of death. It's also administered in most cases where ritual defilement is feared or believed to be the cause of the disease. The bath is also used as a last resort for couples who have been unsuccessful in having children. So many of the sweaty rituals in Africa definitely had a purification significance in terms of ridding the body of evil spirits as well as harmful toxins. The Japanese passion for sauna bathing comes from the original Buddhist practices and so has an explicit religious significance. The sauna is very popular in Japan, and there are a number of traditional sweaty bathing rituals, most of which are no longer practiced. The mushi-buro, sweat bath, kama-buro, kiln bath resembling a kiln, ishi-buro, rock bath, a cave drilled into the side of a rock formation, kara-buro, empty bath, empty of water but full of hot air or steam, Lodian-buro, shelf bath, and the zaku-roguchi, known as the pomegranate entrance bath. Although there are no physical remains of the originals, reference to these baths can still be found in writings scrawled on the temple walls. There are still a few karaburos in Kyoto, the original capital of Japan, where there are hundreds of Buddhist temples. The proximity of the karaburo to the temples clearly shows the significance of purification and hygiene in the Buddhist faith. To pray before the Buddha, the reverend had to be clean and smell natural. When priests and monks bathed, they followed a strict discipline of 25 commandments. Bathing is synonymous with ablution and purification, but it also brings on the sevenfold luck and prevents or cures the 7 diseases of the skin. Shintoism, Japan's second religion, also teaches that one must bathe in order to be at one with God. Yoga means to listen in Sanskrit and incorporates physical, mental, and spiritual practices that are integral for Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. Hatha Yoga is just one aspect of yoga, which in modern times incorporates postures and breathing exercises. But even these have a religious significance. They are 2 aspects of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga, 8-limbed yoga, which represents a comprehensive statement of Hinduism as a way of life. The postures are called asanas, the plural of asana, which literally means seat, and in Patanjali's sutras refers to the seated position in meditation. The breathing exercises are referred to by Patanjali as pranayama, which involves total focus on the prana, breath, as a means of focusing on the divine inner soul. The Brihadaranyaka Upanishad states, "That which breathes by the breath is thy soul, which is in every living being." To focus exclusively on the breath is as much an act of religious devotion as to meditate on, chant the name of, or sing hymns to the Godhead. Bikram Yoga takes its name from Bikram Choudhury, who developed it in the 1980s. And although other yoga schools have their set postures and procedures, the first thing that differentiates Bikram Yoga is the ritual-like nature of the sessions. The 90-minute session consists of 26 asanas that are repeated once for a precise amount of time and 2 breathing exercises. The session commences with pranayama, deep breathing, and one of the aspects of Patanjali's system mentioned above, followed by a sequence of standing asanas, 45 to 50 minutes. The standing sequence is followed by a 2-minute savasana, serene relaxation, i.e. corpse pose, and then a sequence of floor asanas, 35 to 40 minutes. The session ends with Kapalabhati breathing, strong, short exhalations, and a final savasana. These asanas are all just one aspect of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga mentioned above. One entire wall of the Bikram Yoga studio is mirrored so that the participants can watch themselves as they're performing the asanas. Effectively, they are contemplating or meditating on the effectiveness of their own practice. Not only are they performing a ritual, but they are watching themselves perform it, which adds another level of absorption in the ritual. In addition to the pranayama at the beginning and end of the exercise, the entire session is an exercise in pranayama, inasmuch as the participants have to focus on the breath while they're performing the asanas, as well as the periods of savasana. The entire 90-minute session is one long period of meditation where the participants can enter a trance-like state and lose track of the passage of time. The second major difference with Bikram Yoga is throughout the entire 90-minute session there is an instructor who is delivering a motivational monologue. Scientific papers that have been written about Bikram Yoga sometimes refer to it as an instructional dialogue, but it is much more than this. The instructor is performing the role of a shaman and is constantly enjoining the participants to perform the asanas to the very best of their ability and then to give it that little bit of something extra. And during the periods of savasana, the perfect practice requires absolute stillness and total and complete concentration on the breath. The tone of the instructor will change, but still the message is encouraging the participants to achieve the sublime state. The motivational monologue takes the meditation aspect of Bikram Yoga to an even deeper level. It is an integral part of the ritual. The third major difference with Bikram Yoga is that the 90-minute session is performed in a room heated to 40.6 degrees Celsius. In other words, it is slightly hotter than normal body temperature. There is extreme sweating and minimal evaporation. In other words, Bikram Yoga is performed in a sauna. The health benefits of sauna bathing are too numerous to list here in detail. Generally speaking, the main benefit is to our cardiovascular system. It's been argued that the human thermoregulatory system has a corollary relationship with our cardiovascular system, and there is therefore an inherent need to exercise our thermoregulatory system. In other words, there is an inherent need to sweat in order to optimize our health. Many compounds are released in the sweat. The minerals sodium, magnesium, potassium, and chloride are all released via sweat, along with iron and chromium. Sodium and chloride have the greatest losses, and magnesium and potassium in lesser amounts. Copper and zinc are also released in high amounts, and nickel and lead in lesser amounts than copper and zinc. Sweating is the principal mechanism by which such toxins as arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury are excreted by the body, and also some pesticides are excreted in sweat. Sweating is truly a cleansing process. Sauna bathing also has mental benefits as well. It reduces the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. There are significantly high plasma levels of beta endorphins after 47 degrees Celsius Japanese hot spring baths, which explains the feelings of intoxication that are often reported. Sauna bathing reduces oxidative stress after aerobic exercise and can potentially relieve negative positive states such as anxiety, tension, stress, depression, dejection, hostility, anger, fatigue, and confusion. Sauna bathing enhances group therapy sessions in psychotherapy, where those in group sweat counselling condition are found to have a more positive and optimistic state of mind. In conclusion, it's common ground that Bikram Yoga, as a form of Hatha Yoga, will deliver a wide range of physical and mental benefits to the practitioner. In addition, people who practice Hatha Yoga on a regular basis will develop a mindset where they consider their practice more than just a physical exercise, but more in the way of life. They will often develop an interest in the spiritual side of yoga practice and will make lifestyle and dietary decisions that they consider part and parcel of their way of life. This applies to adherents of Bikram Yoga as much as to other forms of yoga. But the essential additional factor in Bikram Yoga of profuse sweating will not only deliver added health benefits that have been verified scientifically, but Bikram Yoga as a sweaty ritual elevates it in a less tangible way to a semi-ecstatic, mildly euphoric exercise in spiritual rejuvenation and purification. Substantial evidence has been given above that sauna bathing and heat therapy in general produce many positive psychological effects, and it's hoped that the material presented in this talk will be sufficient to make the case that statistically there must be an enhanced euphoric and spiritual factor in a sweaty ritual by virtue of the many diverse races and cultures throughout human history who have independently developed them and who practice them not only with enthusiasm but also with reverence. Statistically, a case can be made that for human beings, profuse sweating is a major morale booster. It's a natural way to make us feel good and to make us feel good about our lives.